Okay, I see it is 12 o'clock on the dot, so we will go ahead and get this started. Welcome to our final 2020 Academic Black Table Talk, a platform designed to elevate Black voices, knowledge, and expertise within Minnesota State, with special attention to elevating the voices of Black women. I am Dr. Ida Watts, Chief Diversity Officer with North Hennepin Community College and organizer of these important conversations. I designed this platform to serve as a learning resource that informs both your personal and organizational strategic approach to drive effective racial justice, gender equity, and inclusion forward, specifically from the vantage point as Black scholar practitioners navigating global anti-Blackness. Through Academic Black Table Talk, we share with you our expertise from both a professional and lived lens. Today, I have a panel of Minnesota state presidents joining our conversation with special guest System Diversity Officer Andriel Dees, who organized today's panel and will be co-facilitating with me today. I don't know about you all, but I'm truly excited. So before I turn it over to Andriel for our panel introductions, I want to remind you all that you may use the chat box for questions. And if there is time in the end, we will do our best to get through them. So Andriel, would you introduce our panelists, please? And also feel free to share a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Watts, and again, thank you all for coming this afternoon to partake in. I think will be a really good conversation, particularly around leadership and perspectives that really implicate kind of where we are currently in higher education and where we want to go. So without any further ado, let me just move forward with the introductions of our panelists. I'm not sure how we are all set up in terms of the Brady Bunch boxes, but I'm going to start with to my direct left is Dr. Sharon Pierce. Dr. Pierce is currently the president for Minneapolis College, and she's been serving as president since July of 2016. Previously, she served Howard Community College in several capacities, including vice president for academic affairs and other very significant roles in terms of academic leadership. She earned her bachelor and master's degree from the University of Maryland and her doctorate degree in urban education from Morgan State University. Directly below her is Dr. Joyce Ester. Dr. Ester is the current president for Normandale Community College, and she's been serving in this role since August of 2014. She is currently leading so many very exceptional initiatives at Normandale Community College and comes with a plethora of experience. She's also served as president of Kennedy King College, one of the 7 colleges with the city colleges of the Chicago district. And she also previously served as associate vice president for student services at Bakersfield College in California. Dr. Ester has her bachelor's degree in sociology from Northern Illinois University and a master's and doctorate degree in education from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Finally, but definitely not least, is we have Dr. Annesa Cheek, who is currently serving as the president for St. Cloud Community and Technical College. Dr. Cheek is a student-centered higher education administrator who brings committed and lasting change to colleges using situational leadership style that has proven effective in increasing enrollment, improving organizational efficiency, and advancing efforts to achieve more equitable student learning outcomes. Prior to her coming to St. Cloud Tech, Community and Tech, she served in administrative leadership roles at Sinclair College in Dayton, Ohio. and also in other community and nonprofit leadership roles in Nashville, Tennessee, and also in Dayton, Ohio. Dr. Cheek earned a doctorate of education at the University of Texas at Austin, an MBA from the University of Dayton, and a BA in business management from Tennessee State University. So without further ado, woo woo. Love the HBCU connections here. This is great. So without any further ado, let's go straight into our conversation today. And I'm going to take it back to Dr. Watts to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Andriel. And just for our participants or listeners, Andriel and I will be volleying the questions back and forth so that you are just aware of what is happening. And again, feel free to post your questions in the chat. So in 1 minute or less, President Pierce, President Ester, and President Cheek, tell us what has been your biggest personal or professional accomplishment that makes you smile at night?
One minute or less. I'll go ahead and kick us off. I think one of the things that I am most proud of and continue to be proud of is the work that I did as a director of nursing, actually. When I first started working as a director of nursing, our program was not very diverse, and neither was our faculty. And by the time I passed the baton on to a new dean of health sciences, the program was one of the most diverse in the state of Maryland in terms of students and faculty, and also one of the largest, and still is. And that continues to make me smile.
I'll go next, Joyce. Thanks for starting it, Sharon. On a personal level, you know, I still have children that are at home with me. And so every night they make me smile. I have to say that. And then secondly, professionally, I would say a little bit similar to Sharon. Catalyst is not the right word, but that's the word that's coming into my mind in terms of working with and through people to change the conversation as it relates to issues around equity and race and inclusivity. Just being proud of, you know, once you start creating that context for the conversation, how willing so many people are to engage in that conversation, but everybody's waiting for somebody to say something. And when you start saying something, watching other people come around, rally together to, again, have broader conversations about equity and inclusion and race and some of the things that we really need to tackle in the work of our institutions. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, actually, to add maybe a little brevity to it, when I first saw this question, the very first thing I thought of, it made me smile, was kind of that line from The Color Purple. What I'm proud of is I'm still here, right? In spite of everything, I'm still here. And that literally makes me smile because in spite of all the things that you go through, you still are here. I think in addition to very specific things that I'm proud about and things that make me smile, are those interactions that I have with faculty and students that are long lasting. Matter of fact, just this past week, I got a call from a student who, when I was a president at another institution, who's now, you know, these many years later, who thought about me to let me know about what's going on in her life after all these years. Those are the things that make me smile.
Thank you, Joyce. And that actually, all of your comments are extremely well fitted probably for that next question. I mean, it couldn't go a segue into a better conversation. Joyce, you talked about the fact that when you get that call from a previous student who you may have talked with, informally mentored, formally mentored, however that works, you know, I think that's one of the key components here around developing those leadership skills and developing those leadership qualities. Those qualities clearly are not things that we can do in a vacuum. I mean, that is something that I think you're right. It really does take that concept of a village to move leaders forward to the positions of where they're at. And so looking at that foundation, from your perspective, how important was mentorship for you in achieving your current role as president? And then what is advice that you might have for others that who are looking for mentors or looking to really be guided in a way? I use mentorship in a very fluid statement here, but we'd love to hear more about your road and then advice for others.
Well, I guess I'll start since I went last time. When I think about this question, when I got my first presidency, the reason I even applied was because a mentor put the job announcement in front of me. I had not thought about applying for a presidency at that point. And it was a mentor who saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself yet. And so I think that is the role of a mentor. And I think it's also important for us to trust our mentors, that if these are people who we truly trust for their advice, because we still do the, no, I'm not ready, right? Or no, it's not for me. And yet if they are the people that you've trusted in your circle, then you also need to be able to trust their wisdom. And so for me, it was a mentor who put the application literally in front of my face to say, you need to apply for this. And she was ready with all of the objections I had of like, I can't do this. She was already ready. You can do this. You've done this, da, 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 da. So those would be my quick responses to that.
So I'm in the middle again. So I would say it's, mentorship is really essential. I'll build on what Joyce is saying in terms of, it was not even had it not been for all those that have come before me, whether they're in my family or not, that broader village that you talked about, Andriel, had it not been for all of those and all of those accomplishments and struggles, I would not even be able psychologically to conceive or dream that it was even possible. So I don't take that for granted, that in my mind that I could even physically see myself being in this role. That's just not because of me and me just thinking I'm capable. It's a long lineage of things that have happened and transpired more globally that have allowed me to even think and conceive that this is possible. But similar to Joyce, and how you said you use it a little bit more fluidly, Andriel, the term mentor. I've had people in my village, in my circle, and actually me applying for presidencies came about. I was applying for a different kind of position, and I did not get that position. And for the first time in my life, 2 men on the committee called me after I interviewed for the position and said, you can be a president. You need to apply for presidencies. And I said, I'm not ready. I don't know. I never thought that wasn't in my game plan to do that. You're ready and you can do it. And if you need help, that's part of it too. If you need help, call me, because I can connect you with people that will help you, that will walk you through this. So that's part of mentorship too, that advocacy role. Like, I know people that you need to know in order to make this possible. But like Joyce said, I believe in you. You may not believe in you. Worry about that later. I believe in you. That's enough. Trust me on this. And I need you to move on that. And so I say it's absolutely essential. And I think all of us, I know Sharon would say it too. So we pay it forward, right? So when we see people that don't think we see them, it is important that we articulate in a really, no question about it. I see you, and I see that you have gifts, and we need to see you, and we need to hear you, and we need to see you showing up. And whatever I can do to help you do that, I want to be able to walk your journey with you, kind of thing. So I'm gonna stop.
The two of you have spoken on this so eloquently. I'll only add a little bit about mentorship in terms of it has to do with a match in space and time as well. Because someone who's able to mentor you early in your career may not be the best mentor for you as your career progresses. And so there are people who come in your space, in your circle, for a particular time or reason that can be just what you need at that point, or are able to share learnings or teachings with you that you need to hear. But then you may move away from that person. Doesn't mean that they are not still playing a vital role in your life or on your trajectory. And you may come around back to them. And so you need to be open to being coached and mentored from a variety of people as they become meaningful and they are there at a particular point in space. And then be willing to let folks go sometimes as well, because your career paths, or you move in different directions, but you need to be open. I think that's the critical point. You need to be open to receiving and giving.
Absolutely powerful. And what I'm hearing is be open and aware that folks may be in your life or crossing your path for a season, and that's okay. And thank you for sharing that, because that is certainly something that I've gone through myself. It wasn't until I was in a room of Black professional scholars that I thought, wow, I could do this. There's people like me that do this. It's not just the people on TV. So it's extremely powerful for folks listening in to consider the power of role models. So when we're talking about career trajectories and even opportunities, the next opportunity, how should a person determine if an opportunity is even the right one for them?
We're really good at taking turns, and so I'll go ahead and start. I think that for me, you should always be ready for the next opportunity. The last thing you want to happen is for an opportunity to come your way and you're not prepared, or you don't have the tools or the credentials. So you should always be thinking ahead about possibilities. And then when possibilities present themselves, I am a stickler for match. It should match your skill set. It should match your values. The mission of whatever institution or place that you're looking at should resonate with you. You should be able to look at that. I'm speaking in terms of a college or university right now. The location, the student population that they serve, it should match. It should feel like a pull. And then you know that that's the right place for you. And if it doesn't line up, you need to take a moment and consider, is this the right opportunity? Because you don't want to become a president, a vice president, a senior administrator, just so you have that title and not be in the right place working on the things that matter to you. That's not an opportunity. That is a swamp waiting to swallow you, is what I would say.
Okay, so I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Sharon said, because I think so often as I'm mentoring people right now, I think there's a lot of people who get caught up in the title of the position, right? They want to be president because of the position it holds. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy being in this space, and it is a wonderful position. But if that's the only reason why you want to be a president, a vice president, a dean, a faculty member for that matter, then I think you're going to miss the mark. And you're also not going to be happy, because I think that you also have to find, what are the parts of the job? What are the things that you plan on accomplishing? Who are the people around you? What is your community like? All of those things have to come into place. I know that many of us have applied for positions or seen positions out there where maybe the campus is a perfect match, but maybe there are parts about the community and our families that are not a match, right? And so we have to really be mindful of that. And there are some people that we say, okay, you know what? I'm willing to do that for a season, right? Because there's those also sacrifices that we make also, that we say, okay, yep, I'm willing to do that because these are some things I need to do, and recognize that. So I think that there's a lot of those pieces that have to come into place, but I would agree with Sharon wholeheartedly that you've got to find out, is this an opportunity for you to kind of lean into who you are as a professional, who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, if that's what it is that you want to do and be, because that's so very important. I've seen, so we all read in the Chronicle and other places where people are crashed and burned, because I think that often they take these positions for all the wrong reasons and they get in trouble, right? Like, and let's be honest that yes, as presidents, we are, you know, kind of the head of the pyramid, if you will, but trust and believe, we have constituents that we have to respond to, and it's not as glorious sometimes as people want to make it out to be. And so if you're coming in expecting that I get to make all the decision and it's my way or the highway, then you're in for a world of hurt.
So when I think about this, so much of it to me is less about the position and more about, you got to know yourself, right? And I mean, really know yourself. And so I can even pair this a little bit with the conversation about mentors, having people around you who are truth tellers. If everybody in your circle is telling you you're the best thing since sliced bread, you need to think about who's in your circle. The people who are in my circle give it to me real, raw, and uncut. Sometimes it is a pat on the back, like Annesa, you nailed it. That is right, that's on the mark. I could tell by everybody who was in the room, the way you showed up was, the way you intended to show up is how you were received. Sometimes it's like, you know, you might rethink, or that might not have been, or the way that you're approaching this, you might need to reconsider, or Annesa, you're getting in your own way. And that's part of this that, you know, you got to be real about as well. You really have to know yourself, not only what you excel at and what you are a master at, but where you have room, where there are opportunities for you to grow and build your capacity. And once you, and that comes with time, it comes with experience. And again, having people around you where you have that trust and relationship where they can be like, okay, I'm just going to give you the real deal on how that kind of went. And that didn't work. You know, it comes over time and experience and your own personal seasoning and maturity where you can receive that, right? Because not all of us, when somebody gives you truth, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, then you don't get truth, right? So you got to be mature enough to handle it and then have that discernment and wisdom to kind of know, is that really true? Or is that them kind of, you know, maybe they're putting something on me that's really not mine. So you got to kind of be able to tease out and understand what that is, so that as you're approaching a position, then everything else that Sharon and Joyce are saying come into play. Is this, because you don't know if it's a fit if you don't know yourself and what your strengths are and what you're looking at and what's the goal. Because like Joyce said, the straight path is not always the best path. Sometimes it's zigzag. Sometimes you make lateral moves. Sometimes it may feel like you're taking a step back, but the growth, the experiences, the learning that you get catapult you 2-3 steps ahead, because you took a position that helped you build out your personal portfolio. It's not what people think you should do, but you got to know what your portfolio is and how you kind of round that out to make yourself a stronger candidate for any position that you might want.
Boy, we could go on here. This is some truth telling. These are some nuggets. I hope those in the audience are taking notes, because this is just very real when it comes to just thinking about your career trajectory, just in general. I think that there are definitely some components, not just around becoming a leader, but just around finding yourself, finding that space that's going to help you get up in the morning and go, you know, I really like what I do and I'm doing it and I see purpose. And so along those lines, one of the things that is, and Joyce, actually you all kind of agreed, talked a lot about this a lot, was about the issue around the aspect of community. When you think about these positions and where they're situated, and really what your role and purpose is within the community, I think that's an essential component. So when you look at that perspective, and I use community both in the internal and external sense, how should you, or how do you think about those challenges and the politics that are associated with this role? And when you're serving in this role, how does that impact your thought processes? what you do, how you engage. Why is that important? Why is that community piece so important in this role?
So from my perspective, community is part of, right? Community is our middle name, St. Cloud Technical and Community College. So we do view ourselves as our community's college. And that means we don't live or work in a bubble. We're part of a larger community. And that means everything that we do and everything that is done in our community, there's a cause and effect. The decisions that I make, the decisions that our institution makes have an impact on our community. The things that are done in our community have an impact on our institution. Our communities look to us to be solutions, not just, which is good, right? We're about conferring credentials, but they're looking to us to be solutions to poverty, to homelessness, to food insecurity, to mental health issues, to provide hope where people have no hope. And so everything that we do has implications, and the constant it feels like negotiating that we're doing, because we're trying to bring people along. We're trying to help people understand where we think the institution needs to be in order to make the community not just survive, but thrive for everyone that is there. And so the challenge of negotiating with groups of people and trying to communicate that message so that everybody can see themselves in the work that you're doing, so that they feel connected to it and a part of something bigger than any individual or any one of us, is a real part of our job that takes a lot of, from my perspective, Joyce and Sharon could probably do this in their sleep, but a lot of time, effort, coordination, and planning to make all of that come together.
Yeah, and isn't that the essence of what community colleges do? I mean, honestly, that is the essence of community and technical colleges. That's why they were created, to serve the community. And so you need to make sure that when you're looking at serving your students, the constituents, the politicians, the folks who own the businesses, the chambers, the nonprofits, it's a community of people, and we're in the community of the community, and it has to be core and central to your work. Otherwise, you're not in the right industry. And when I say industry, I mean post-secondary education in community and technical colleges. That is the essence of the work that we do.
I think I would add this other piece, particularly thinking of the panel that we have here, though, is this notion of community is so fluid, right? Because it is not just the community of the people who are physically located around you, right? It is the community as far as race, socioeconomics. There are so many different pieces. And I think in this day and age, it gets more and more complicated, right? Because I think that there could be an issue that comes up and a college might need to address it, but do you address it from an economic standpoint? Do you address it from a racial standpoint? Do you address it from, a political standpoint, or some intersection thereof, right? And so I think that's the piece where community, and again, being able to understand the community that you live in, but then going back to something that I think Sharon and both Annesa said early on, is knowing yourself, knowing your institution, and all of those things, so that we can say, okay, that's what we're going to lean into, and maybe that's what we're not going to lean into, just because it doesn't align with, or if I have competing things that I have to deal with, I have to choose. And so I think that community piece, when I actually read the question, I think it is, there's two parts to it. It's as an institution, our community, but also as leaders, our community, right? Because again, those of us, I think one of the things that you could pick out, and Sharon, Annesa, and I, even how we interact on this call, because we are a community amongst ourselves, right? And so we lean on each other to be able to get the information we need, get the support that we need. And so I think that community needs to be seen from an institutional standpoint, but also from the individual standpoint, the leadership standpoint, and all those other things, which could take us on for another couple hours. But I think that that's important, because all of those things intersect, because I think that, when you think about how, again, as as a female president, as a Black president, how I might respond to something might look different, right? Not necessarily better or worse, but might look different, might be perceived different than someone else within the community. And so we also have to navigate that as well. And so when I think about, like, there was a conversation that, Michelle Obama had, when they were asking about, kind of the things that they did or didn't do in the White House. And she was very clear about what her community would accept from her or would not accept from her behaviors. And I think that, taking it back to what this table talk is about, I think there's also things for us as women, as Black individuals. What are the things that we feel like our community would or would not accept from us?
That's such an excellent point, Joyce. There are things that I may be able to do because I'm situated in downtown Minneapolis that the community in St. Cloud might not accept from Annesa. And we need to know that and understand that because it impacts the work that we do. And it may be that we both need to do the same thing, but we have to approach the work a little bit differently so that the community is open to the work and understanding of the work that we're trying to accomplish. And so what's happening around you and who you're working with is all part of the community. And you need to take all of that into consideration when you're thinking strategically about what am I going to do next? How am I going to do it? And how am I going to frame the conversation so that there's the opportunity for all of us to be successful.
And when we're thinking about, whether it's your roles or folks in their respective roles, what decisions we're going to make, and oftentimes fear may creep in. And you all shared a little bit or a lot when it came to mentorship, but also depending on your personal journeys, perhaps not feeling confident at that time that you may have been ready for a certain position. And we know that research speaks to folks from minoritized identities, and this impacts everyone, but fear, that can be such a large aspect of identity, right? Whatever we've been socialized to believe about ourselves because of our racial, ethnic, gender expression, the list goes on and on. So when you think about prior to your current roles, what have you done to push past your fears? And what are some words of encouragement that you are willing to share with anyone listening in who is struggling to push past their own negative self-talk?
For me, I want to say, I think acknowledging that it's a real thing is important, because a lot of times when I was not in this position and I would see people in higher level positions, they painted the picture that I walked away feeling like, oh my God, they're perfect. Like, they don't make mistakes. They don't have any fears. They don't have doubts. They don't have insecurities. They're always crystal clear about what the plan of action is, and they just go. And it wasn't until I started just building up my circle of people who were in different places and positions, and we had those trusting relationships, that they started sharing more, being more vulnerable, disclosing more, and just acknowledging that it's a real thing. Imposter syndrome, it's a real thing. I don't care what the position is. There are people, and I feel it, and so just acknowledging it, because for me, they would have given me more power had they acknowledged that it was a real thing for themselves. That may not have been their story, everybody, but I just cannot imagine that all these people I've seen, nobody has had these kinds of, but they just didn't name it. So naming it is important. So I'm naming it for anybody out there. It is something that I have always had to manage and navigate. And the way I've done it is, again, relationships that I've developed with other people, giving myself permission to make mistakes, and to not succeed at something, but being committed to trying to understand what was it that didn't go as like I would have wanted it to go, and being committed to, right, not repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Having some people in your village who are going to love you up a little bit and say, it's okay. You know, you just like Jigga, you know, Jay-Z, just dust yourself off kind of thing. And you keep it moving, and you find those things that fill your cup. Your cup has to be full. You know, a lot of people are out and goal oriented and driven, and they do, and they feel like they're not getting ahead. You got to keep your cup full, whether that is prayer, fasting, meditation, whether that is exercise or crafting or whatever it is. You know, keeping your cup full will help you navigate through the storms that inevitably will kind of come up in your life. And again, having a trusted circle of people around you, but you got to be able to speak the words and take a chance with somebody that you believe you can trust, that says, hey, I'm experiencing this. Can you help me? You know, and to put you got to put yourself out there a little bit, because otherwise everybody thinks that you're doing great and you don't need help. So it's kind of hands off.
I think you need to be, this is going to sound really simple, but you need to be kind to yourself. You need to understand that you are a human being and you will make mistakes. And then you have to own it. And you have to say, I did that. And this is what I'm going to do moving forward. I may not be able to correct it, but maybe I can mitigate the damage. And so how do I make sure that I don't let that happen again? And how do I learn from that? It's a learning experience. How do I grow from that? And be willing to grow and accept the lesson and understand that everybody makes mistakes. And so in forgiving yourself, you have to be willing to forgive others who make mistakes as well. Because everybody that you're leading, working beside is going to make mistakes as well. And so you need to be able to help mitigate that and accept the mistakes that others make. So just being kind to yourself and others, and thinking about what's just, what's right. And I guess one of the most important things, I think, is that if you move from a sense of integrity and ethics, you're going to be okay with the mistakes that you make because you were doing it out of a sense of integrity and ethics. And then you're able to navigate the outcome of that. Because whatever you do, you've got consequences. You have to be willing to accept the consequences of your decisions and actions. And so even if they don't turn out quite the way you hope they would, if your decisions and actions were based on what's ethical and a sense of integrity, you'll be able to deal with the consequences, good or bad.
You know, I know that we have other questions, but the other thing I think that, and I don't have an answer for this, but I think that it makes us, we should be mindful of even where that question comes from, right? In the sense that there's a standard, right, that we have come in this country, maybe in higher ed, I don't know, that says that a leader looks like X, a leader does X, a leader doesn't do X. And where does that come from, right? One would argue, is that a white male way of thinking? Is that a upward, middle class, whatever it is? I just think it's really interesting that when we ask that question in the first place, and again, this is not a judgment on the question, but I think we ask our questions like when we beat up on ourselves or feel like imposters, well, imposters to what? Right? Because I'm not an imposter to who I am. I am who I am, right? I'm an imposter because I'm trying to fit a mold of someone else, right? And that's something that I might have put on myself. And I don't necessarily have the answer to it because yes, all the time I feel like I'm imposter or I'm not ready, but then I have to step back and say, as compared to what, right? Because again, we all, and the people on this call, whatever job you have, my hope is that you were selected to do the job because of what you bring to the table, that you were not hopefully selected to be the next whoever was there before, right? And so I think that that's something that we always have to remind ourselves when we're comparing ourselves? Are we comparing ourselves to what the role requires, or are we comparing ourselves to this standard that either we put on ourselves or that others put on ourselves? And when can we, kind of step out and go, I get that, right? I know that for me, I'm the kind of person that, I'm walking around and I'm high-fiving and hugging everybody and talking to everybody. Some would say that that's not a leader. Says who? Right? And so I just think that those are the kinds of things that we always have to, for ourselves, to really be honest with. What are we really comparing ourselves to? Now, don't get me wrong. There are things that we absolutely need to aspire to, but I think we need to put it in a more realistic context, if that makes any sense.
Amen, Joyce. That is so true. That is so true. And I thought about that as you were saying it, because I'm watching you, right, as you're speaking. And you and I are all like this all the time, and this and people have said to me since I've been in Minnesota, well, I noticed in that meeting you were very emotional. And so my initial reaction is, oh my God, I'm not showing up as a president. I must not be. And then it got to a certain point. I was like, hold up, wait a minute. I am a very emotionally expressive person. I am emotionally expressive. Some people are not as expressive as I am, but is that their problem or is that my problem? And if you don't pay attention, people will put that on you as if to say, I am more comfortable with people who are less emotionally expressive. So I'm signaling to you that that's who I need you to be as the president. And you have to respectfully find your way to say, I appreciate and acknowledge where you are and what makes you comfortable. Yet and still, that is not why I am here. I am not here to make you comfortable. We are all, right? That's hard to say. It takes you some time. I'm not here to make you comfortable. Like, we got some really important work to do. We're trying to change the world as best we can from the place that we're in. And if that means you being uncomfortable for us to achieve this, I'm okay with that. Right? I'm okay with that. And if there's something that I can do to support you, let's talk about that. I'll maybe consider that. But I should not have to be less of who I naturally am because it doesn't fit into the mold or the mindset of what you are accustomed to seeing in this particular role. So I think that's a very important point, because people don't come out and say it explicitly, Joyce. It is very subtle, and these nuances that come out that if you're not careful, you'll say, well, gosh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not showing up the way I should be showing up. Yeah, you got to be professional, but professional, there's a whole rainbow of what professional is. And there's room for more colors in the rainbow as well.
Well,
Microphone drop, Andriel.
well, there it is. What I love about the thread that's been of this part of the conversation has really been about bringing yourself, bringing your individuality into whatever role it is. We talk about things that a leader should have, but all three of you have talked about, but you still bring your individuality into the perspective, because if you can't do that, then why are you here? It almost feels as if, we have to be almost imposters to the perspective of the position. And that serves no one. That serves no one. It doesn't serve your community. It doesn't serve yourself. So to that end, I think that you all have really, really spoken really well into this next part of the discussion around attributes of leadership. And, some of those include a perspective of emotional intelligence, that ability to discern. Please share, as you see fit, the importance of discernment and wisdom as you have exhibited that in your role, as you have I think we all continue to evolve in the area of wisdom. I am very happy to say I just turned 51 yesterday, and I am not the 40-something person. And that has nothing to do with 40 or 30, because there are some extremely wise and wonderful people that hit it much earlier than I did. But, you know, right now, at this point in my life, I feel a heck of a lot more comfortable in who I am and how I show up. And I'm slowly into that space of, and if you can't deal with it, well, okay, that's not my problem. That's yours. You know, so wisdom, discernment, how does that assist you in your role as president?
I had two things when I saw this question. One, I think I have a little bit of a struggle with discernment, and it actually goes back to something I think, Annesa, that you said earlier. I think we have to be mindful because discernment is based on our own perspective, right? And so therefore, if someone is trying to tell me something, I'm like, well, I'm discerning different. No, because you're really trying to make it fit into really what you want it to say, right? And so I still struggle with discernment. I think, yes, you need to listen and to be able to take in cues and hear what people have to say, and to be able to figure out, are you going to go this direction or that direction? And so I would say maybe using some level of judgment. And I think that really where wisdom comes in is actually not so much my wisdom or the wisdom that I have, but my ability to seek out the wisdom in others. Right? My ability to be able to say, who are the smart people in the room? You know, what is that expression? If you're the smartest person in the room, find another room, right? And so I think it's really, that's the wisdom of figuring out who, you know, where's the answer? Who can I go to? Who's going to do this work? Who's going to do that? So to me, the wisdom, and I guess to use the word discernment, is being able to understand where all of it is. And again, it goes back to that other question of, that my view of a leader is not the person who has all the answers, right? Is not the person who's going to do all the work, is not the person who's going to be out in front. It's going to be able to say, who are the folks who are going to be able to do things? I used to, you know, joke and say, I don't know everything, but I try to know everybody, because everybody then knows everything. Right. And so I just think that wisdom really is about identifying it in other people, not necessarily in yourself.
I just think that if you are trying to accomplish something and make decisions, that you have to be, to me, it's the ability to listen. You need to be able to listen to what folks around you are saying, and you need to be able to process that. And also, you know, and come up with conclusions and have conversations about it. If you are trying to solve every problem alone, you're going to fail. You need to be able to hear your team, take in input, and maybe even change your mind. There's nothing wrong with changing your mind. I think if you absolutely feel like you know, you have the answers all the time, you're going to be in trouble. You need to be open to hearing and listening and changing your mind. Folks will, you know, politicians get in trouble. Oh, they changed their mind. They flip-flopped on a position. They made a 180-degree turn. Well, the inability to do that is a lack of discernment and a lack of wisdom, I think. I think you need to be able to take in all kinds of information and process it. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to do nothing for a little while, because you need to step back and consider and reflect. This idea that I need to make a decision right now, is not always the best thing to do. I know we're in a pandemic, but we don't live and operate in a state of emergency all the time. We have time to step back and think and consider and look at different points of views before we act. And the failure to do that is a lack of discernment and wisdom. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned COVID-19, and many of us consider this a double or triple pandemic when we consider everything that's happening, even more specifically when it comes to racism. So the question for you all is, how do you navigate racial battle fatigue? And what are your recommendations to folks who are listening in as far as self-care? How can that be managed for people who are struggling?
I'm smiling because I'm thinking, when you say how do you navigate the fatigue, you have to lean on the sources of strength around you. And that could be spiritual, it could be prayer, it could be engaging in things that are self-healing for you. Some folks do really well because they spend time outside or in nature or something like that. But you have to lean into the strength around you. So it could be a conversation with a colleague is what helps get you through the day. The understanding that you're both struggling with the same thing and you talk it through, and then figure out how to support each other through the rest of the day. None of us can do this by ourselves. And for folks who are struggling, maybe they don't have the support systems they need. So we need to put more support systems in place. We need to have more conversations, more safe spaces, more access to help, whether that's mental, physical, food, all of those things. And also, you have to give yourself permission to be tired sometimes and just say, today is not the day. I can't deal with this. Today is not the day, right? I'm just not going to deal with this today because I don't have it in me today. But give me a moment and I can show up and do well tomorrow. But for right now, I need to heal myself because I have nothing to give you. When you say fill up your cup, I need to step back and do some self-care and fill up my cup so that I can move on to the next challenge. But you really do have to depend on the strength of those around you and recognize that they have strength and know who fills your cup and who's able to support you. Like these two wonderful women that I'm in this chat with. When I'm tired, a lot of times the first person I may talk to is Joyce or Annesa, just to say, we got this, we can keep going.
The one thing I was going to say, and not to bring the conversation down, but I think when we talk about this double and triple pandemic, COVID might be new, racism is not, right? And so I think that for those of us, people in marginalized communities, Black women, Black folks, like these are struggles and tiredness that we've had and we've navigated for a long time. And it kind of goes back to when I started by this, it says, what makes me smile? I'm still here. In spite of all those things, I'm still here. And I think that the one good thing that comes out of it, of everything that's been happening, it actually gives people that I feel like I have more of a license now to kind of say, I need a break, right? Whereas before, I'm not really sure. I had a colleague who once said, instead of calling in sick, she wanted to call in Black, right? Like it was just a moment where she just needed. And I feel like one of the good things is that I feel like I can actually say that out loud more, particularly to non-Black friends and colleagues. And so I think that is kind of a positiveness, but I think we just have to accept the fact that these things are not new, right? And so we've been dealing with it and we've kind of got the calluses, that kind of show for it, and we've figured out how to navigate it, but we've been navigating as Black people, as women, as Black women, our whole lives. And so this is not new. I think it's new for some people to now see us all of a sudden, people who wanted to like not see us in those very different identities are now going, oh, wow, how is that impacting you? Like, wow, you didn't wonder how that impacted me 5 years ago when XYZ happened, whatever. So I think that those are the kinds of things. But I would agree with Sharon. I think we have to give ourselves permission, because at the end of the day, we are presidents and we have a job to do. And so I can't just sit at home and go, okay, I'm not dealing with any of this stuff. I'm only dealing with my stuff. We all have a job to do. And so what do we need to do to be able to kind of step in and do the work that we've been charged to do? I know we're running out of time. I feel bad.
I know, that's why I don't want to say anything. I want to go through the questions. I feel bad.
Annesa, if you have something you want to share though on this, please do.
Okay, I was gonna not say, but part of my transition from Ohio to Minnesota has been smoothed by the two women on this call, and the network of Black presidents specifically that are here in Minnesota. And I have told them before, had it not been for that, I don't know where I would be right now, because it took me a minute to figure out, like, what is going on? I couldn't figure it out. People are being nice to me. There were a few explicit acts of bigotry or racism that I experienced for sure when I came to Minnesota, but I don't think it was taxing to me to the degree that I was feeling it in my physical self. And it took me a minute. It's like when you mix up a cake, you can't just peel the flour out. You can't tease out, what is that one thing that I want to take? I couldn't figure it out. And I don't know what clicked one day, but I said, there's no Black people here. My whole life in Ohio, in Tennessee, in Texas, for the most parts of the places I've lived, there have always been numbers. There's been a Black community that, regardless as to what I had to navigate during the day, when I left work, I could lean back and fall on friends, colleagues. I could go to a place where we could have cocktails and we can listen to live jazz music, or I can get my feet done, I can get my hair done, there was a cultural fabric and a network that I took for granted that I could just naturally fall in, that made it all better and that helped kind of fill my cup so I could do it again the next day. When I came to Minnesota, I just fell back on my back. There was nothing to fall back on. And it was so stressing for me. And I did not realize what it was until I started teasing it out and dissecting it. And that's what it was. And these two are in the cities. That's an hour and a half away. I'm a working mom with two small children. I just can't flip my life like I used to. But I found other ways to do it. But that's a real thing, because I'm seeing some of the questions in the chat about, how you connect. And so affinity groups in Minnesota are so important. Like Black folk, getting with Black folk, Indigenous people, you always need your village where you can just be unapologetically you. And there are spaces, but I don't think there are nearly enough spaces for that kind of support and engagement to happen.
Excellent. I'm glad I made you say something. Because you're right. I mean, I think this is a very different place, particularly for people of color, to digest, to try to figure out. I've been here 30 years and I'm still figuring it out, y'all. So, but all of that said, one of the key and by the way, thank you all, thank you audience for your questions. I wish we did have a whole nother spectrum of an hour to really do a deeper dive and engage in your questions, because your questions are spot on. Some of them we kind of hit a little bit of the surface at, but a few of them we're would love to come back and do a deeper dive. But I do want to kind of come off of this conversation. There is a question about what suggestions, kind of building off of what you were saying, Annesa, do you have for BIPOC professionals in the Minnesota state system, or either within our system or elsewhere in Minnesota, to find those mentors, to find that village, to help engage you both, what sounds to me like needs to happen both personally and professionally?
So since I just kind of talked a little bit about that, I think we do need affinity groups, and it's not, I don't think it all has to be about how to network and how to get to the next job. And it just needs to be, let's just have some fun. Let's go listen to some, once COVID kind of starts to, we can manage that better. Gosh, let's go to, everybody's going to the museum, an art museum, or we're gonna, you plan and schedule things so that you just have this fabric of people with like interests, and other things will naturally come as a result of that. But you just got to be able to get people together first, I think. And I just think there's more room for us to try to get people together, even socially, around the beauty that is Minnesota. There's so many wonderful things to see and do. I will say that for sure. And so how do we pair the two? This need to get people of color together and all the beauty that exists in Minnesota, to bring people together so we can just start building relationships and connections, especially somebody like me, or others, lots of other professionals that are in what you all call greater Minnesota. I find that quite interesting. Greater Minnesota, in the greater Minnesota area, there's even less connection, and we're even more spread out. So just planning, right? We just got to get a plan on, how do you kind of make this stuff happen? Because I never want to show up in this role as president as someone who is on a pedestal or untouchable. I'm real, I'm human, I'm just like you. I like to laugh and joke and kick back just like everyone else. And so, we need to build that fellowship more, I think, in the Minnesota system. And I think there's great opportunity for us to do that.
I just want to add one little thing. In addition to affinity groups, I think communities of practice, you can learn so much from each other. And that's another way of building relationships, because you enter a community of practice and then you may exit that one and enter another one, and you build relationships and you just keep building on that. And the whole thing is, it's interpersonal. It really is. It's about building relationships with people, interpersonal skills. That's how you find mentors. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, Joyce, will you mentor me? You have to have a relationship with that person. So, and that can be daunting to try and find one when you're out looking for one. And the funny thing is, I don't think I've ever gone out looking for a mentor. I think that it's based on relationships that you build and conversations that you have, and then you start building that, and it grows from there. But to just go out and say, hey, will you mentor me? That doesn't necessarily help the most. You may get some skills and some give and take, but you need to build the relationship.
Okay, I know we are over time, and I'm a stickler for time. So my apologies to our presidents. If you had something at 1 o'clock, blame it on us. But thank you so very much, President Pierce, President Ester, President Cheek. Amen to the amen. Throw the head back. I was feeling that. Black excellence. Thank you, Andriel, for organizing this panel. Just thank you so much. And if you've been going through the comments, so many folks have just been so ecstatic and empowered by this conversation. So there is power that you all bring, that you've poured into everyone, which, whether you realize it or not, it is what it is. There is power that you wield that has been shared. So I thank you personally for all that you do. You are an inspiration to all of us. And we are, as Dr. Ester said, we are here. Yet another day. We are here. So thank you all for a great 2021 or 2020, and we will see you in 2021. And thank you to the System Office, as always, for the support in helping to elevate this conversation. Have a good one. Bye-bye.